You are the end of a very long story. Not the end in the way that means finished. The end in the way that means the most recent, the latest note in a melody that has been playing for so long that no one alive was there when it began. 200,000 years. That is roughly how long our species has existed in something like its current form. 200,000 years of human beings waking up and going to sleep, eating and walking and sitting by fires and looking up at the night sky and wondering. 200,000 years of people feeling what you feel tonight, the particular weight of the dark, the way the mind moves differently when the body is still, the strange and quiet country of the hours before sleep. And before our species, before the particular shape of the human skull became what it is now, before the particular arrangement of genes that makes you recognizable as human was fully assembled, there were others, earlier versions, older models, forms that were almost us but not quite, walking the same land, breathing the same air, watching the same stars with eyes that were already, in all the ways that matter most, deeply and entirely alive. The first human being who ever lived did not know they were the first. There was no moment of beginning that anyone marked, no crossing of a threshold that anyone felt. Evolution does not announce itself, it simply moves, slowly, generation by generation, the way a river moves, not in straight lines, not with urgency, but in the persistent and patient direction of wherever the ground tilts. And yet, somewhere in the deep past, there was a morning. A morning when a person woke up who was, in the accumulation of every small change across every previous generation, something genuinely new, a person whose brain was shaped in a way no brain had been shaped before, whose capacity for symbol and story and the particular kind of self-awareness that asks what am I and where did I come from was, for the first time, fully assembled. That person woke up. Stretched, perhaps, felt the cold of the morning air on skin that was exactly as sensitive as yours, heard the birds, smelled the smoke of a fire that had burned through the night and was now reduced to pale ash and a thread of blue smoke rising into a sky that was the same sky, the same blue, the same particular quality of early light that you would recognize if you were standing there, and went about their day. With no idea, no possible way of knowing, that somewhere in the unimaginable future, a descendant of theirs would lie in the dark thinking about them. That is the thought worth sitting with tonight. Not as a burden, not as the weight of time pressing down, but as something lighter, as a kind of company, the company of the very long line of people who got up every morning and went to sleep every night and passed something forward, something so durable it crossed 200,000 years without breaking, without being lost, arriving here, tonight, in the particular arrangement of cells and memories and quiet hopes that is you. That is remarkable. That is, in the most literal sense, a miracle of continuity. Think about what had to go right. Every single one of your ancestors survived long enough to have a child, every one of them, without exception, going all the way back through the centuries of recorded history, back through the long silence before writing, back through the ice ages and the droughts and the migrations and the 1,000 ways a human life could end before it passed anything forward, every single link in that chain held, every single one. There is no other way you could be here. Not one ancestor failed to reach the next generation, not one link broke. The chain is unbroken from the very first human to the person lying in the dark right now, and that chain is you. You are not at the end of it, you are the current front, the most recent expression of something that has been finding a way forward for 200,000 years. I find this thought genuinely steadying. Not in a grandiose way, not in a way that adds pressure, but in the quiet way that a long history adds ballast, the sense that whatever tonight holds, whatever the week has been, whatever the mind is turning over in the dark, it is being turned over by something that comes from a very long way back, something that has seen harder things than this and found its way through. And tonight we are going to spend some time with that continuity, moving through 100 quiet facts about the first humans, about their bodies and their minds, their fires and their dreams, the landscape they moved through and the things they carried with them, delivered slowly, without any urgency, in the way that you would tell things to someone you were sitting beside in the dark. Because that is what this is. You do not need to remember any of this, you do not need to stay awake for all 100, the facts are not a test and there is nothing to pass, they are simply a path, a slow path through something ancient and warm and deeply, deeply human, and wherever on that path sleep finds you, that is exactly the right place. I am glad you are here. That is a simple and true thing to say, these nights, when the dark has a particular kind of weight to it and the mind will not quite settle, there is something valuable about having company, even quiet company, even just a voice beside you in the dark, saying, here is something worth knowing, here is something that connects you to the longest story ever told. You have had a day. Whatever it held, whatever it asked of you, whatever is still moving quietly at the edges of your thinking, waiting to be set down, you are allowed to let it rest now. You are allowed to be, for the next while, simply a listener, simply someone drifting slowly through deep time, not solving anything, not arriving anywhere, just moving, in the good company of a story that began long before any of your worries existed and will continue long after they have found their resolution. The first human looked up at these same stars. Not different stars, not a different sky, the same stars, the same slow rotation of the same constellations, the same Milky Way arching overhead in all its cold and silent density, and felt, very probably, some version of what you feel when you look up at a dark sky and feel yourself go quiet, the smallness of oneself against the vast and unhurried dark, and the strange, specific comfort of it, the way the immensity of the sky makes the smaller worry small in a way that is, actually, useful. Let that happen now, if it wants to. Let yourself be small in the best way, small the way a fire is small against the night and yet entirely sufficient, entirely warm, entirely real. There is a fire. Not far from here, in the version of the world we are entering tonight, a fire that has been kept alive through the dark hours, tended through the night the way all fires were tended, because fire was not easy to make and easier to keep, and the people gathered around it are sleeping now, most of them, their breathing slow, their bodies curved toward the warmth. And one of them, just one, is still awake, looking at the stars, feeling the night, the way you are feeling it now. We are going into the deep past, into the long story, into 100 quiet things about the people you came from. Settle now. Let your weight move into whatever is beneath you. Let your breathing slow. The first humans are waiting, and they have all the time in the world. The first fact worth knowing is that you are not as far from the first human as the numbers suggest. 200,000 years sounds like an incomprehensible distance, and in some ways it is. You could stack every recorded human civilization inside that span and still have room left over. You could fit every pyramid ever built, every empire that rose and collapsed, Every language that was born and died and was forgotten, all of it fits inside 200,000 years with space to breathe. And yet, if you were to line up all your direct ancestors, one after another, parent behind parent, grandmother behind grandmother, reaching back through that entire span, the line would be roughly 8,000 people long. 8,000? Not 8 million. Not 800,000. 8,000, a number small enough to hold in the mind, a number that would fit in a modest village, and at the end of that line, not impossibly far away in any direction that the imagination can reach, stands the first one, stands the person we are spending tonight with. The body of the first human was almost exactly the body you are lying in right now. That is the second fact, and it is worth letting it settle, because we tend to imagine our ancient ancestors as somehow different in their physical form, shorter, perhaps, or heavier browed, or in some visible way unfinished, but the earliest anatomically modern humans, the people who lived 200,000 years ago in what is now Eastern and Southern Africa, had skeletons that a modern doctor could examine and find nothing unusual about. The same bones, the same number of them, 206 in an adult, the same arrangement, the same proportions, the same arched foot that allows the particular human stride, the same deep socket in the hip for the same upright walk, the same long gracile fingers built for precision and dexterity, the same ribcage rising and falling with breath, the same skull, rounded at the back and high-domed, housing the same brain. And the brain of the first human was not smaller than yours. That is a common assumption, and it is wrong. The brain of early Homo sapiens was, on average, the same size as the brain of a person living today, roughly 1,300 cubic centimeters of extraordinarily dense, extraordinarily complex, extraordinarily expensive biological tissue. Expensive in the sense that the brain consumes approximately 20% of the body's total energy even while the body is entirely still. Even now, as you lie here, your brain is drawing a fifth of everything your body produces, running its vast and largely invisible operations. The first human's brain was doing the same. In the dark, in the quiet, burning its fifth of everything. The skin of the first human was dark. This is the science of melanin and ultraviolet radiation. The earliest Homo sapiens lived in equatorial Africa where the sun is intense and the risk of UV damage to the folate in the bloodstream, folate being essential for healthy reproduction, meant that high levels of melanin were strongly selected for. Dark skin was the original human skin, and it is beautiful, as all skin is beautiful, as all the variations that came later from migrations into different latitudes are beautiful, each one a different adaptation to a different quality of light. But the original, the baseline, was dark. The eyes of the first human were almost certainly dark as well, brown, the color that results from higher melanin concentration in the iris, is by far the most ancient eye color. Blue eyes are a relatively recent development, a mutation that appears to have arisen only about 10,000 years ago in a single individual. Every blue-eyed person alive today shares that one ancestor, that one moment when a small variation in a single gene produced something new. 10,000 years, a single source. The world is more connected than it looks. The first human had a voice. Not language as we understand it, or perhaps the very beginnings of language. The question of when language first appeared is one of the most debated in all of human evolutionary science, because language leaves no fossils. You cannot dig up a word. you cannot find a sentence in the sediment. But the anatomy for speech was present. The hyoid bone, the small, floating, horseshoe-shaped bone in the throat that anchors the muscles of the tongue and larynx and makes the full range of human speech physically possible, was present in the same form it has in your throat right now. The descended larynx that allows humans to produce the wide range of vowel sounds that language requires was present. The neural architecture for the fine motor control of lips and tongue and breath that speech demands was present. The hardware was there. Whether the software, the symbolic, grammatical, fully modern language, was running on it yet is the question, and the honest answer is that we do not know. The evidence leans toward language in something like its modern form being a relatively late development, perhaps arriving in full complexity only in the last 50 to 100,000 years, but the capacity for it was built into the body from the beginning. The voice was ready, waiting for the words to arrive. The first human slept. And this, of all the facts about the first humans, is the one I find most quietly extraordinary, the fact that they slept, that after the day's work of surviving, the walking and the gathering and the watching and the attending to one another, they lay down, in the dark, and closed their eyes, and went somewhere. Sleep is ancient. It is older than humanity by an enormous margin. Sleep in some form exists in almost every animal that has been studied, in insects, in fish, in reptiles, in the nematode worm, which has exactly 302 neurons and sleeps. Sleep appears to be a fundamental requirement of any nervous system above a certain level of complexity, a non-negotiable, a built-in necessity that evolution has never found a way to remove. And in humans, sleep is when the brain does its most important maintenance work. During sleep, the glymphatic system, a network of channels around the brain's blood vessels that functions as a kind of cleaning system, becomes dramatically more active. The channels widen, cerebrospinal fluid flows through them at a far higher rate than during waking hours, and the waste products of a day's neural activity, the metabolic byproducts of thought and perception and all the biochemistry of consciousness, are flushed out. The brain cleans itself, in the dark, while you are elsewhere. The first human's brain did this too, every night, lying on the ground or in the shelter of a rock face or the soft interior of a grass nest, the same ancient maintenance running, the same deep restoration, the same below-the-surface work that you are beginning now. You are doing, tonight, something the first human did. Not a version of it. Not a descendant of it. The same thing, the same biology, the same necessity, the same ancient gift of the dark hours. The first human dreamed. REM sleep, the phase of sleep characterized by rapid eye movement, by the near paralysis of the voluntary muscles, by the vivid and emotionally intense experience we call dreaming, is present in all mammals and in birds. It is ancient, it is conserved across hundreds of millions of years of evolution. It is not an accident or a byproduct. It appears to serve real functions in memory consolidation, in emotional processing, in the integration of new experience with existing knowledge. The first human dreamed. And what they dreamed, we cannot know. The content of dreams leaves no record, but the experience itself, the experience of being somewhere else in the dark, of narrative and sensation without the anchor of the waking body, of waking and holding for a moment the fading edges of another world before it dissolves, that experience was theirs. The same experience that is waiting for you now, in the dark, just beyond the threshold you are approaching. The first human felt pain. The same pain signaling system, the same nociceptors in the skin that detect heat and pressure and damage and send their signals up through the spinal cord to the brain, the same experience of acute pain and of the duller, more persistent pain of injury, and almost certainly, the same capacity for the pain that has no physical address, the pain of loss, of loneliness, of grief. We know that early humans buried their dead. The practice of deliberate burial appears in the archaeological record over 100,000 years ago, and burial, the intentional placement of a person in the earth, the care taken with the position of the body, the occasional presence of objects placed alongside. Burial implies something about how the living felt about the dead, implies that the boundary between the living and the dead was felt as significant, implies, though we should hold this carefully, something that might be called mourning. The first humans grieved. In whatever form and with whatever understanding of death they held, they felt the absence of those they had lost, they marked it, they did not simply leave and move on. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, one of the most deeply human things there is. The first human was social. Our species did not evolve alone, we evolved in groups, in bands of related and unrelated individuals who depended on one another for survival in ways that were specific and complex, the sharing of food, the collective defense against predators, the communal raising of children who are, compared to the young of almost every other species, extraordinarily helpless for an extraordinarily long time. A human infant cannot walk for a year, cannot be truly independent for well over a decade. This extended childhood, this long dependency, is the price of the large brain, the brain that is so large and so metabolically expensive and so full of potential takes a long time to develop, and during that development, the child needs to be held and fed and carried and protected, needs the village. The first humans were the village. And in the village, there was care. There is fossil evidence of individuals who lived for years with injuries or conditions that would have prevented them from foraging for themselves, injuries and conditions that could only have been survived with the sustained help of others, people who were fed, and looked after, and kept alive not because of what they could contribute but simply because they were part of the group. The first humans looked after each other. That impulse, that ancient, pre-linguistic, older than civilization impulse toward the care of others, is in you. It came from the same place everything else came from. It is part of the inheritance. Now, let the science rest. Let the facts become something softer. We are going to stop counting and start feeling, stop mapping and start simply being present, in the world the first humans moved through, in the particular quality of that world, that air, that dark. The night in that world was different from any night you have experienced. Not in its chemistry, not in the stars that filled it, not in the temperature or the sound of the wind, those things were the same, but in its darkness. There was no artificial light. Not a single photon produced by human technology anywhere on the entire surface of the earth, no streetlights casting their orange bloom on the underside of clouds, no distant city glowing on the horizon, no screens, no lamps, no lit windows, nothing. On a moonless night, in the Africa of 200,000 years ago, the darkness was total. And the stars? The stars were extraordinary. The Milky Way, which most people alive today have never seen in its full, unobscured brilliance because they have always lived within the light pollution of human settlement, the Milky Way was simply there, every night, a river of cold light so dense it cast faint shadows, so present it was simply part of the world, part of the furniture of the night, the way the hills were part of the day. The first humans lived inside that sky. They did not observe it from a distance the way we observe it, the way we travel to dark sky reserves and set up telescopes and look at something we have largely removed from our daily lives. They lived inside it. It was the ceiling of every night they ever experienced, and the particular grandeur of it, the particular quality of what it produces in a human nervous system that is perfectly calibrated to respond to it, was simply theirs, freely, every night. The fire. The fire was the center. We do not know exactly when humans began to control fire. The evidence is disputed and the dates keep shifting as new sites are found, but by the time of the first anatomically modern humans, fire was almost certainly a technology already ancient, already so embedded in the daily pattern of human life that a group without fire would have been, in many environments, almost unimaginable. Fire changed everything. It changed what could be eaten, because cooking breaks down the tough cellular walls of plant matter and denatures the proteins in meat, making both dramatically easier to digest and dramatically more nutritious. The caloric gain from cooked food over raw food is significant, and some researchers argue that the energy surplus from cooking is what permitted the brain to grow as large as it did, that, in a very real sense, we cooked our way to consciousness. Fire extended the day. In a world without artificial light, the usable hours of the day end at sunset, but fire pushed the boundary. It created a zone of warmth and light in the dark, a space where the social life of the group could continue after the sun went down, where food could be prepared and shared, where tools could be worked on, where the voices of the group could continue in the dark. And around the fire, the stories began. We do not know when storytelling began, for the same reason we do not know when language began. Stories leave no fossils, but fire and storytelling are deeply connected in the anthropological imagination, and in the research of those who study the oral traditions of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies. Studies of the Kung-san people of the Kalahari, and of other groups who live lives structurally similar to those of our ancient ancestors, have found something specific and beautiful about the stories told around the fire at night. They are different from the stories told during the day. Daytime stories, in these communities, tend toward the practical, information about resources, about social relationships, about recent events. But night stories, told around the fire in the dark, tend toward something else, toward the spiritual, the mysterious, the imaginative, toward the kind of story that does not describe what is but reaches toward what might be, or what lies beneath what is, toward narrative that produces in the listener a particular quality of attention, relaxed, receptive, open. The first humans told each other stories in the dark. And those stories were, in some deep sense, the beginning of everything that humans have ever made or imagined. Every song, every poem, every painting on every cave wall, every religion, every philosophy, every novel, every film, all of it growing from that first circle of firelight in the dark, from those first voices speaking into the night. You are part of that tradition right now. This is a story being told in the dark. And you are here, in the way that the first humans were there, receptive, open, letting the words move through you without holding on. The landscape the first humans moved through. Eastern Africa, 200,000 years ago, was not the savanna of the popular imagination, not the flat, dry, golden grass stretching to the horizon, The climate of that period was variable, cycling between wet and dry in patterns driven by the same orbital mechanics that drive our climate today, and in the wet periods, the landscape was lush. Lakes. Large, shallow, freshwater lakes scattered across the Rift Valley, their shores thick with reeds and papyrus, their surfaces alive with birds, the air above them dense with insects and the sound of water, and beyond the lakes, woodland and open grassland in a mosaic that the first humans moved through seasonally, following the availability of food and water. The smell of that world. Wet grass after rain, the particular green and mineral smell of a lake shore in the morning, the smell of wood smoke, the smell of dry earth when the rains first arrive, petrichor. That smell has a name now, but the experience of it is ancient. The first humans knew that smell, felt the same involuntary response to it, the same deep pleasure in the nostrils that you feel, because it was already ancient when they were new. The sound of that world. The sounds would be recognizable: wind in grass, water on stone, the calls of birds whose descendants are still calling in Africa today, and at night, the insects, the vast, steady, layered orchestra of insects that fills a warm African night from dusk to dawn, a sound so constant and so complete that it becomes a kind of silence, becomes the background against which silence is measured. And the warmth. The warmth of the night air in equatorial Africa, not cold, not the sharp cold that requires shelter and fire for simple survival, warm, the particular softness of air that is close to the temperature of skin, air that does not demand anything from the body, that allows the body to simply be. Imagine lying on the ground. Not a hard ground. The dry season ground of the African savanna is dusty and fine, almost like powder, warm from the day's sun even well into the night. Lying on it is not uncomfortable, lying on it under the full weight of the Milky Way, with the sound of insects as the silence, and the warmth of the air as the blanket. This is where the first humans slept. This is where the long story began. And somewhere in that warm, insect-loud, star-saturated dark, a person lay still. Their breathing slowed. The fire had burned down to embers, the embers sending their faint red light across the faces of the sleeping group, and this one person who is the great-great-great ancestor of the great-great-great ancestor of a line that eventually leads to you, was almost asleep. Their body was heavy. Their mind was releasing its grip on the day. The stars were overhead, the same stars, turning slowly in their ancient patterns. And the dark was good. The dark was simply the dark, safe and warm and full of the breathing of people they knew, full of the quiet presence of those who had made it through another day. That is what you have right now. The same dark, the same breathing, your own, and perhaps the breathing of others nearby. The same stars overhead, though the ceiling between you and them is different. The same body, settling. The same ancient signal moving through the nervous system: rest, rest now. The day is done, and the night is good, and you are held. I am here with you in it. It is good to have company in the quiet. It is good to move through deep time together, to feel the length of the thread that connects you to that first person lying in the warm African dark. If sleep is close, let it come. There is no fact that cannot wait. The first humans waited 200,000 years for you to find them. They can wait a little longer. And if you are still here, still listening, still following the thread, we have more to go. We are not done with the deep past yet. The story is still moving, The way it has always moved, slowly, in the direction of wherever the ground tilts, in the patient and unhurried way of things that have all the time they need. The first human's hands. There is something about the hands that stops me every time I think about it. The human hand is one of the most extraordinary structures in the natural world, not because of its strength, which is modest compared to our closest relatives, not because of its size, but because of its precision, the opposable thumb, the sensitivity of the fingertips, the range of grip from the full fist grasp of power to the delicate pinch of the finest manipulation, the hand that can crack a nut and the same hand that can thread a needle. The first humans' hands were these hands. They made things. Stone tools had been made by human ancestors for over 2 million years before the first anatomically modern humans appeared, but the tools of the first humans were more refined, more varied, more clearly the product of forward planning and accumulated knowledge. The Acheulean hand axe, the blade technology that would eventually lead to the microliths of the Middle Stone Age, these are not simply sharp objects. They are the evidence of minds that could hold a plan in place across time, that could imagine a finished object and work toward it through multiple preparatory steps. The first human made something and then used it to make something else. That chain of thought, that capacity to use tools to produce tools, is one of the things that most clearly separates human cognition from that of any other animal, and it was present, fully present, in the hands and the minds of the first humans. They also made things that were not useful. This is the fact that moves me most deeply of all, because it is the fact that makes the first humans most recognizably, unmistakably us. At sites in South Africa dated to over 100,000 years ago, archaeologists have found ochre, red iron oxide, ground and mixed and used to make pigment. They have found shells with small holes drilled through them, shells found far from the nearest coastline, that appear to have been strung and worn as jewelry. They have found geometric engravings on pieces of ochre, abstract patterns with no obvious practical function. They made color. They decorated themselves. They made patterns for no reason other than that the patterns were worth making. That is art, or the beginning of art, or the impulse that would eventually become art, the impulse to make something that adds to the world not because it is useful but because it is beautiful, or meaningful, or simply because the making of it was satisfying in a way that nothing purely practical ever is. The first human felt the urge to make something beautiful, and acted on it. With their extraordinary hands, in the available light, with the materials the world provided. The first human child was small and helpless and held. The human infant is, as we said, among the most dependent of all mammal young, born effectively premature by the standards of our primate relatives, because the brain grows so large that if gestation continued until the brain were fully developed, the head would be too large to pass through the birth canal, so we are born early, and the brain continues its most dramatic growth outside the womb. In the first year of life, the human brain doubles in size. The first human child was held for that year, and the years after. Held close to a body, kept warm by contact, fed, spoken to, or sung to, or made sounds that carried meaning even before the sounds were words. The first human mother sang. We cannot know this for certain, but the evidence from infant-directed speech across every culture ever studied, the universal tendency of adults to speak to infants in a higher pitch, with a more melodic quality, with exaggerated rhythm, the evidence from lullabies, which exist in every culture without exception, in every language, with remarkably similar features. The evidence from the evolutionary function of singing as a bonding mechanism, as a way of communicating safety and presence and continued attention. All of it points in the same direction. The first human child was sung to sleep by a voice in the dark, the way you are being spoken to now. Not the same words, not the same language, but the same function, the same ancient, below-language communication of safety, of presence, of you are not alone in the dark, of I am here, of rest now. The first human knew hunger, and knew the particular sweetness of eating after hunger, the way food tastes different when the body has been waiting for it, when the blood sugar has dropped and the stomach has been empty long enough that the first taste of something is almost overwhelming. They knew thirst, and knew the relief of water. They knew the pleasure of warmth after cold, the way a fire feels when you have been away from it, the way the heat moves into the hands and the face and the chest and something in the body releases a breath it had been holding. They knew the pleasure of lying down after a long day of walking, the particular, almost luxurious pleasure of a body that has worked hard finally being allowed to stop, the heaviness of the limbs, the way the ground receives the weight of you, the way everything that was tense and active and upright during the day simply gives. That pleasure is yours right now. Whatever the day held, however far you walked in the ways that matter, the body knows, and the body is grateful for the dark and the still and the soft. The first human looked at the moon, every phase of it, new moon to full moon to new again, the 29.5-day cycle that is so regular, so reliable, so much more dependable than the weather or the availability of food or any of the other variable conditions of survival. The moon was a clock, the first universally available, always readable clock in human history. And the moon was more than a clock. It was a companion, a face in the dark that was always there, that changed in predictable ways, that could be relied upon. There is evidence from early symbolic cultures that the lunar cycle was being tracked and recorded long before any other form of timekeeping, notches on bones that appear to record the phases of the moon, the first calendar, made by the first humans, in the dark, watching the sky. The same moon is out there now, going through its phases, as it has done for 4.5 billion years. As it did on the nights when the first humans watched it, as it will do on nights when no one who is alive today is here to see it. The moon does not care about any of this. It simply moves. And we, below, have always watched and felt something that does not have a clean name in any language, something between wonder and comfort and the specific peace that comes from witnessing something larger and older than yourself continuing its ancient motion. That feeling is yours right now, if you want it. The moon is out there, moving, as it always has. And you are here, in the dark, in the way the first humans were in the dark. Still. Breathing. Held. There is something in you that is older than you know. Not older in the way of memory, not older in the way of things you learned or were told or carry consciously, older in the way of the body, older in the way of the deep architecture of what you are. The cells in your body right now are running programs that were written long before the first human, long before our genus, long before our family, long before anything that would be recognizable as a primate, programs so ancient and so conserved by evolution that they run in essentially the same form in organisms as distant from you as yeast, as a fruit fly, as a nematode worm. the circadian rhythm. The 24-hour biological clock that governs when you sleep and when you wake, when your core temperature rises and when it falls, when your cortisol peaks and when it recedes, when your digestion is most active and when it rests. This clock is not a human invention, it is not even a vertebrate invention. It runs in plants, it runs in fungi, it runs in single-celled organisms that have no nervous system and no brain and no sleep in any recognizable sense. The circadian rhythm is perhaps 2 billion years old. 2 billion. The Earth itself is only 4.5 billion years old, and almost half of that time, almost half the entire history of this planet, a version of the clock that is ticking in you right now has been running, has been tracking the rotation of the Earth relative to the Sun, has been organizing biological time around the fundamental 24-hour cycle of light and dark. You are not keeping that clock. The clock is keeping you. And right now, at this hour, the clock is saying the same thing it has been saying to living organisms for 2 billion years. It is time for the dark, it is time for the slow, it is time for the below-the-surface work of restoration that only the night can do. You are not fighting biology when you come to rest. You are surrendering to something ancient and intelligent and very much on your side. Something that has been refined by 2 billion years of solving the problem of how a living thing survives and repairs and prepares itself for the next day, something that knows, in the way that biology knows things, far more about what you need than the thinking mind does. Trust it. It has been doing this for longer than you can imagine, and it has never been wrong about what the dark is for. The genome. Inside every cell in your body, coiled and folded into a space far smaller than a full stop on this page, is the complete instruction set for building a human being, roughly 3 billion base pairs of DNA, arranged in sequences that code for proteins, that regulate the expression of other sequences, that carry within them the long accumulated record of every successful adaptation your lineage has ever made. And threaded through that genome, woven into the very structure of what you are, is the first human. Not metaphorically, genetically, the first human's DNA is in you, not all of it, not a perfect copy, because every generation introduces small variations and every generation inherits only half of each parent's genome, but across 8,000 generations, the signal persists, attenuated, shuffled, recombined across hundreds of thousands of reproductive events, but still there, still traceable, still real. Modern genomics can look into your DNA and find, with some precision, the signatures of ancient populations, can identify the rough geographic region where your distant ancestors lived, the approximate time periods of significant migrations, the evidence of ancient admixtures with other human populations. Neanderthals, Denisovans, populations whose names we do not yet know, all of them left traces, all of them are, in some small but real sense, still here. In you. Sleeping in the genome, waiting in the sequence, present in the chemistry of what you are. The first human is not gone. They are distributed, spread across billions of living people, diluted beyond any individual recognition but present in the aggregate, present in the fact that we are here at all, present in the particular shape of the human brain and the human hand and the human capacity for language and story and the making of things that are beautiful and the mourning of those who are lost. All of it came from somewhere. All of it came from the beginning. And the beginning is in you. Now, something closer, something more immediate. The breath you are taking right now. That particular molecule of oxygen entering your lungs at this moment has a history. Oxygen in the atmosphere was not always there. For the first 2 billion years of the Earth's existence, the atmosphere contained almost no free oxygen. Oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. It was put there by life, by cyanobacteria, beginning roughly 2.5 billion years ago, producing oxygen as a waste product of their own chemistry, releasing it into the atmosphere in quantities that eventually transformed the entire planet. The oxygen you are breathing was made by life, and the carbon dioxide you are breathing out will be absorbed by plants, will be fixed into sugar, will move through the food chain, will become, in time, something else entirely, will become, perhaps, a leaf, or a root, or the body of a small creature moving through the soil in the dark. You are part of the cycle. You have always been part of the cycle. The first human breathed the same cycle, took in the oxygen that the ancient photosynthesizers had put there, breathed out the carbon dioxide that the plants would take back, part of the same vast, slow, circular exchange that connects every living thing on this planet to every other living thing, that has been running without pause since the first photosynthetic organism began its work. You are not separate from that. You are not an observer of that. You are it. The migration. The first humans did not stay where they began. Somewhere between 60 and 100,000 years ago, the dates continue to shift as new evidence arrives. A group of Homo sapiens left Africa. We do not know why. We do not know whether it was a single group or multiple groups. We do not know whether they were driven by climate change that altered the availability of food, or drawn by the possibility of new territory, or whether the movement was simply the gradual, generational, step-by-step extension of a range that eventually, over thousands of years, carried people to the far edges of every continent. But they went. And as they went, they encountered landscapes that no human had ever seen: the coast of Arabia, the forests of South Asia, the long chain of islands stretching toward Australia, the steppes of Central Asia, the birch forests of Europe, and eventually, crossing the land bridge that once connected Asia to North America, the vast and empty expanses of the Americas, landscapes of extraordinary beauty and strangeness, landscapes that no human eye had ever rested on before. Those first arrivals. Imagine being the first person to see the Grand Canyon. Not the Grand Canyon with its parking lots and visitor centers and the long line of people taking photographs, but the Grand Canyon as it was, silent, immense, the Colorado River a silver thread a mile below, the color of the rock in layers that record hundreds of millions of years of geological time, and you, a person who has walked here from somewhere else, following game, following water, following the slow drift of a population moving through new land. Standing at the edge of something that has no name yet in any human language. Feeling something. Something that we would recognize if we could somehow be there beside that person, as awe. The first human feeling of awe in the presence of the Grand Canyon was felt by a real person, a person with a name their companions knew, a person who had parents and children and a history of their own, a person who would have been, in every way that matters, entirely recognizable as a human being. And they stood there, and they felt it. The same feeling that lives in you. The feeling that rises when you stand at the edge of something vast and realize, in your body before your mind catches up, that the world is larger than any conception of it, that there is always more, that the horizon is always further than you thought. That feeling is not modern. That feeling is ancient. It is the first human feeling. It was the feeling that drove the migration, the feeling that said, further, further, there is something worth seeing beyond the next horizon. And there always was. There always is. The first human who ever lay down to sleep in a place where no human had ever slept before, felt, very probably, the particular quality of that. The particular combination of exhaustion and alertness that comes from a day in new territory, the senses still slightly heightened from the novelty of it, the sounds unfamiliar but not threatening, the stars the same, always the same, the one fixed reference point available to any human being anywhere on the planet. Looking up, finding the familiar in the unfamiliar. The stars, always the stars. And then, the breathing slowing, the body releasing its vigilance into the warmth of the night, sleep arriving the way sleep always arrives, not announced, not requested, simply present at the threshold, and then past it. That is where you are now. At the threshold. There are things about the first human that science cannot tell us. What made them laugh? Laughter, that involuntary, whole-body, acoustically unmistakable expression of a kind of joy or relief or recognition. Laughter is present in all human cultures without exception. It appears to be one of the most ancient of all human social signals. Research suggests it predates language, that the neural systems underlying laughter are older than the neural systems underlying speech. The first human laughed. At what? We cannot know, but the laughter was real, felt in the same body, produced by the same mechanism, heard by other humans who responded to it the same way you respond to laughter, with recognition, with the involuntary softening that happens when someone laughs and the people around them feel the safety of it. Laughter is a signal. One of its evolutionary functions appears to be the communication of safety, the signaling that the immediate environment is not dangerous, that the social group is in good standing, that there is no threat that requires vigilance right now. When the first humans laughed around the fire, they were telling each other, we are safe, we are together, this moment is good. What made them afraid? Fear, that most ancient and most conserved of all emotional responses, the fight or flight activation of the sympathetic nervous system, the surge of adrenaline, the dilation of the pupils, the diversion of blood from the digestive system to the large muscles, the sharpening of attention to a single point. The first humans were afraid of real things. Predators, leopards moving silently through the dark, lions, hyenas, the crocodile in the water, these were not abstract fears. They were appropriate and accurate responses to genuine threats that were genuinely present. And yet the fire kept them away. Fire, that single, extraordinary technology, did something that no amount of human muscle or speed could have done alone. It created a boundary, a circle of light and heat and smoke that the predators would not cross, a zone of safety in the dark. The first human sat inside that circle and felt, on the boundary between the firelight and the dark, exactly what you feel on the boundary between waking and sleep, the knowledge that something lies beyond the boundary, the dark, the unknown, the vast, and the warmth and the light on this side of it, and the choice, the conscious or unconscious choice, to trust the boundary, to stay in the warmth, to let the unknown be unknown for tonight. You are inside the circle. The boundary is holding what the first humans loved. We know, from the evidence of burial, that they loved their dead, that the loss of a person was felt as a loss that required marking. We know, from the evidence of care for the injured and ill, that they loved the living, that the presence of a person in a community created bonds that persisted even when that person could no longer contribute in practical ways. We know, from the evidence of art and ochre and the decoration of the body, that they loved beauty, that the desire to make something beautiful and to adorn oneself was present and active and worth the expenditure of time and resources. We know, from the evidence of music, bone flutes that are among the oldest artifacts ever found, and the deep evolutionary connection between human musicality and the social bonding that music produces, that they loved sound made intentionally, made together, made for the pleasure of making it. They sang, not just as lullabies, as group activity, as social glue, as the thing you do around the fire when the day is done and the food has been shared and the children are drowsy and the stars are out and there is nothing more that needs to be done. They sang, and the singing moved through them the way it moves through you, the vibration of it in the chest, the way a voice in harmony with other voices produces something in the body that is difficult to name, a warmth, a dissolution of the boundary between the self and the group, a feeling of being held inside something larger. Music. Of all the things the first humans made and felt and shared, music is the one that crosses time most cleanly, because music does not need translation, does not need context, does not need a shared language. A slow, low, gentle melody will slow the breathing and lower the heart rate in a human being regardless of where or when they were born, regardless of what language they speak or what culture they were raised in. The nervous system responds to music directly, beneath language, beneath culture, in the old circuits, in the circuits the first human had. The voice you are hearing right now is doing something like that. Not music, but the slow, low, gentle rhythm of it, the pacing of it, the spaces between the words. These are not accidents, they are the same signals the first human mother sent to her child in the dark, the same signals that have always meant, slow down, you are safe, the night is good, rest now. You have been receiving those signals your whole life. You were born knowing what they meant. We are approaching the end of the facts now. Not because there are no more, there will always be more. The science of the first humans is one of the most active fields in all of biology and archaeology and genetics. New finds are announced every year, and every new find reshapes some part of the picture. The story is not finished, it may never be finished. But we are approaching the end of tonight's facts. The end of this particular slow walk through deep time. And so, before we arrive at the end, let one more thing land. Every person who is alive on this earth tonight, every single one of the 8 billion people currently breathing on this planet, shares, with every other person on this planet, a common ancestor who lived within the last few thousand years. This is not a metaphor, it is mathematics. It is the mathematics of genealogy, which demonstrates that the number of ancestors you have doubles with every generation, and within a surprisingly small number of generations, the total number of required ancestors exceeds the total number of humans who have ever lived, which means that the family trees of all living humans overlap, massively, comprehensively, inescapably. You are related to every person alive. Not distantly in the way of a polite metaphor, actually, genetically, in the traceable way that genealogy and genetics together can demonstrate. And if you go further back, if you go back to the first humans, then every person alive is descended from those first people. Every person alive carries, in their genome, the signature of that original population. Every person alive is, in the most literal biological sense, family. The person in the next room. The person on the other side of the world currently waking up into their morning. The person you passed on the street today without looking at. Family. All descended from the same small group of people who sat around fires in Eastern Africa and looked at the same stars you are lying beneath right now. That is not a small thing. That is perhaps the largest and most important thing. And it is available to you right now as a source of something, not quite comfort, because it is too large for comfort, something more like foundation, like the feeling of ground beneath the feet, solid, real, regardless of what is happening above the surface. You belong to something? Something old, something vast, something that is not diminished by difficulty or distance or the particular noise of this particular moment in history. You belong to the human family. And the human family has been through things, extraordinary things, and has found its way through all of them, and is here, tonight, still here, still looking at the stars, still sitting by the fire, still singing the children to sleep. Still here. And now we are at the end. Not the end of the story. The story does not end, it is still being written, right now, by every person alive, including you. The story is the ongoing thing, the continuous thing, the thing that was happening before you arrived and will be happening after you leave. But we are at the end of tonight. And tonight began with a single image, a single thought worth carrying into sleep. You are the end of a very long story. That is still true. It will still be true when you wake up. It was true before you knew about the circadian clock, before you knew about the hyoid bone and the arbuscules of language, before you knew about the ochre and the shells and the lullabies and the fire and the long migration to the edges of the world. It was always true. You are the most recent expression of something that has been finding a way forward for 200,000 years. Something that has survived ice ages and droughts and the crossing of oceans and the descent into valleys where no human had ever been. Something that has loved and grieved and laughed and sung and made things for the pure pleasure of making them. Something that has always found its way to the end of the day. And lain down. And let the dark be the dark. And trusted that the morning would come. Because it always has. 200,000 years, and the morning has always come. Every single time. The fire is low now. The embers are the deep, pulsing red of something that has been burning for a long time and is not done yet. They will be here in the morning. A small effort will bring them back. They have been kept. The people around the fire are sleeping. Their breathing is slow, their bodies curved toward the warmth, their faces in the emberlight are peaceful in the way that sleeping faces are always peaceful, the particular smoothness that comes when the work of the day is finally and completely set down. The stars overhead are turning. Slowly, in the ancient pattern, in the pattern that will still be turning, very nearly the same, thousands of years from now. The same stars the first human named without words, the same stars that have watched every sleeping human who has ever lived. And you are one of them. You are in the line. The unbroken line, from the first one to you, every night of rest, every morning that followed, every person who lay down in the dark and trusted the turning of the world to bring the light back. You are the latest. You are the current. You are, right now, doing what they all did. Lying down. in the dark, letting go. The first human would recognize this, would know, in whatever way the body knows things, that what you are doing is exactly right, that the dark is for this, that the body knows, that the long story continues in the morning. But for now there is only this. The slow, the still, the dark that holds everything, the breath that moves without effort, the weight of a body that has done its work and is allowed now to rest. The long line of the people you came from, stretching back through all the fires, all the stars, all the mornings that followed, all the dark, holding you, as they were held, as we are all held, by the same night, the same turning, the same ancient, patient, generous dark. Sleep now. The story continues in the morning. It always has. It always will.